Welcome to John's Tours. Our tour today is about Chester and its famous walls. We will start our tour with a town hall, and just by standing here there's so much to talk about. Roman columns, sculptures, a baby elephant, and a medieval archway that led to a monastery which became Chester Cathedral. The imposing town hall, 160 foot high, built in 1869 in the Gothic Revival style by a certain William Henry Lynn. The present-day town hall has tiers of Gothic windows, corner turrets and a massive central tower, inspired by the 13th century cloth hall or yeep. William Lynn employed two colours of buff grey and pink for the sandstone facing. It's a Grade 2 star listed building, and it was opened by the Prince of Wales, the future King Edward VII, accompanied by William Gladstone, Prime Minister. Inside the town hall until the early 1990s was a magistrates' court, and it has been used as a filming venue for the film Far from the Madding Crowd and the Sherlock Holmes series. Today it's open to the public for tours, events, weddings, exhibitions and live programmes. There's a statue called A Celebration of Chester by Stephen Broadbent. The sculpture represents Thanksgiving, protection and industry. As we turn around to face the medieval stonework of the abbey, we see a bronze baby elephant called Janja. It means life in Hindi. This was a gift from the magnificent Chester Zoo in 2010 by the sculptor Annette Yarrow. Chester Zoo is a wonderful family day out. To the left of the baby elephant is the medieval little abbey gateway built around about 1300. This gateway led to the Benedictine Abbey. The architect is thought to be Richard Longeneur. What we see today has a central arch for vehicles and a small arch for pedestrians. On each of the central arch is a blind niche, a 3-panel vault with diagonal and ridged ribs similar to those of the Undercroft or Browns of Chester. The Abbey had the privilege of holding the main annual fair outside its gate during midsummer, at the time of which trading elsewhere in the city was prohibited. It is possible that the Mystery Plays performances started here. Mystery Plays dealt with biblical subjects. Exactly who wrote the Mystery Plays and where they were first performed is unknown. However, the evidence points to round about 1420. However, all the Mystery Plays in Britain appeared within a few years of each other. As we go under the Abbey archway, let's see if you can see the old carved sandstone bosses of Christ, St. John and St. Werburgh. And as we go through the Abbey archway, we see a lovely Georgian square. The Abbey Square was originally the outer courtyard around which the various buildings were part of the Abbey's administration. And by the time we enter the 18th century, the square was occupied by disreputable alehouses and other unsavoury occupants. From the 1750s, they were all swept away and Abbey Square was created in the Georgian style. They called it the London style, suitable for professional gentlemen. Today, there's a central green with a column that came from the former Exchange building that unfortunately burnt down in the 1860s, and it's surrounded by cobble paving. See the causeways of weathered York stone laid between the cobbles in the square. They were known as wheelers, and were provided for the residents of carriages with their solid wheels and primitive suspension to have an easier passage over the cobbles. The occupants at first were well-to-do and clergy. See the blue plaque where Charles Kingsley, author of The Water Babies, founder of the Grosvenor Museum and canon of Chester Cathedral between 1870 to 1873. From the square there is Abbey Street that leads to the Kell Yard, of which we'll talk about more later. Let's come out of the square into the Northgate, and opposite is the Westminster works of J.A. Lawson and Company, coach builders, harness makers and motor engineers, formed in 1902 but ceased trading in 1914. But have a look at the superb terracotta frontage. Today it's now part of the Northgate Development Shopping Centre. On the right hand side we see the Art Nouveau cinema and library called the Story House. Built in 1936 in the Art Deco style by a member of Harry Whedon's team called Robert Boulevant. recently refurbished with a 37 million new theatre, cinema and library in May 2017. As we walk towards the Northgate, you'll see a number of public houses. The area was used to be called the Beast Market and led to several pubs with the name Bull. The Pied Bull is the oldest licensed warehouse in Chester, and there's been a building on the site to at least 1155. In 1533 it was known as the Bull Mansion, the house of the city recorder in 1571, and it has a mixture of old Tudor and Georgian decor. The Georgian part used to be much bigger, and much of the Pied Bull was rebuilt in the 17th century. Inside there's a lovely fine oak staircase, which comes from the old mansion circa 1530s. The Pied Bull was one of Chester's great coaching inns, travelling to London, North Wales and to Birkenhead. Fares to London cost £3 and 3 shillings. Fares to Holyhead, £1, 11 shillings and sixpence. Chester is full of ghost stories. A certain John Davies fell down a Tudor staircase in the Pied Bull with a knife in his hand and killed himself. He apparently can be seen reading the paper in the residence lounge. And there is a story of a lady wearing a grey cloak who could be seen in rooms 8, 9 and 19. Between the Pied Bull and the Red Lion is King Street. It started life as a barn lane, a medieval track leading through orchards and a garden to a large barn belonging to the monks of St. Werburgh. Today it is a wonderful Georgian street. We come next to the Blue Bell. The Blue Bell was just a bell in 1399 and is the oldest surviving example of a medieval inn. At times it was used as a rest house for pilgrims visiting the shrine of St. Werburgh. The bell name is often used for pubs near churches. The name of bell was also derived from the curfew bell, which was situated next door in the bell yard. But what was the curfew bell? The custom of curfew practiced in many English towns dates back to the Norman law of curfew, which means cover fire. Houses in medieval times were built of timber, and a fire in 1278 had nearly destroyed most of Chester town. Fires had to be covered or extinguished, and citizens shut up safe inside their homes to protect the city at night. Rules that gorse and faggots, i.e. firewood, could only be stored outside the city walls. This area in Chester is remembered to this day and is called gorse stacks. The bell too has a resident ghost. During the English Civil War, the city of Chester was loyal to King Charles I. The inn was used to stockpile grain and other provisions. On the 24th of September 1645, the Battle of Rowton Moor took place, and many of the royalist forces left through the Northgate to take on the parliamentary forces. A cavalier, which was a name for a royalist supporter of King Charles, bid farewell to his lover Henrietta and promised to return by 10 p.m. that night. However, the royalist forces were well beaten, and it is said she saw the outcome from the Blue Bell window. She must have had fantastic eyesight, and when it became clear that her lover had been killed, she rushed to the cellar and took her own life. It is said that she still climbs the steps to this day looking out the window waiting for her lover to return. Many people have reported they have seen strange sightings and eerie sounds. The Bell Inn was also used as a ticket office for coach journeys, and we can see a small window high in the building. This small window was utilised to sell tickets to the passengers sitting on top of the coach. Perhaps it was the very first drive-through. The first Chester coach ran in 1657. In medieval times there was a town crier or bellman, and it was the job of the town crier or bellman to inform the townspeople of the latest news and proclamations, bylaws and other important information. He would begin his cry with the words, "Oyez, oyez," which comes from the French to listen, accompanied by the ringing of a large hand bell. Having read out his message, he would attach it to the post of the local inn, therefore posting his message. Perhaps this is the reason why we have several newspapers called the Post. In Chester in medieval times, we had day bellmen and night bellmen. The night bellman's job was to patrol the streets after dark, acting as peacekeepers, arresting any offenders and taking them to the stocks. It was also his job to ensure fires were put out, dampened for the night after the curfew bell. It was recorded that in 1715 the bellman at the cross read out a proclamation on behalf of the mayor of Chester, and it said, "All persons not to walk about the streets or roads of the city at any unreasonable hours of the night." Town criers were protected by law. Anything they did was done in the name of the monarch, so any harm to the town crier would be an act of treason. Today, Chester has a town crier, and you'll see him and hear him at the cross, normally Tuesday to Saturday, but please do check his times. As we pass the Bell restaurant on the left-hand side, we come across some of the famous architecture of Chester. The restaurant that we see in front of us was in fact a fire station, created in 1911 by James Strong, who was a pupil of John Douglas. It has 3 arched entrances and an elegant round windows with half timbering. Just before we come to the Northgate, itself was an area of many pubs, and in this pub was the famous Golden Falcon. It was here in 1741 the Handel lodged for 3 to 4 days. It was also in 1769 that Henry, Duke of Cumberland, brother of the King George, stayed at the Falcon in his pursuit of Lady Henrietta Grosvenor, the wife of Lord Richard Grosvenor. What a scandal. Lord Grosvenor took the Duke of Cumberland to court and was awarded £13,000, nearly $2 million in today's money, for what they called in those days as his criminal conversation with Henrietta. It also should be noted that Henry, Duke of Cumberland, duly married Anne Luttrell in 1771, so provoking outrage by George III that he provoked the Royal Marriages Act of 1772. When the Romans founded the legionary fort of Chester, it fitted into the normal pattern of military bases. In outline, it was rectangular with rounded corners. On each of the 4 sides was a gateway, giving access to the major streets. Northgate was one of these gates that over a period of time has had many changes, of which I will show you in a series of pictures. In Roman times, Northgate would have been known as Porta Decumana. It was also simply called the Porta, that is, the quartermaster's gate where supplies came through, and from its very beginning, the Northgate was a place of ill omen. Any Roman soldier found guilty of a serious crime would have been marched through the gate to be executed. The Norman medieval gate rose on the Roman foundations. In medieval times there was a toll. Executions happened here, and there was a jail and a pillory. And a pillory is a wooden framework with holes for the head and hands, and so offenders were formally imprisoned and exposed to public abuse. In the Northgate jail, the prison cells were, at times, hewn out of rock, 30 feet deep, and some of these prison cells were called as follows: the snake pit, the dead man's room, and perhaps the chamber of little ease. Now this was a cell that was described where the prisoner could neither stand, sit, kneel, nor lay, but bent in all their joints and have no resting place for any part. The martyr George Marsh was held here, and he was a Protestant martyr, died 1555 under Queen Mary. The Northgate that we see today was designed by Thomas Harrison between 1808 to 1810. It is neoclassical in design with 3 arches, unfluted Doric columns, and built of pale ashlar sandstone. As we go through the Northgate, to our left is the Blue Coat Hospital. It used to be the site of the Hospital of St. John the Baptist, founded in the late 12th century, and it was knocked down by the Royalist forces in the English Civil War to stop parliamentary forces taking cover. The Blue Coat Society was founded in 1700. The Blue Coat was the first society for the promotion of Christian knowledge outside of London. Nicholas Stratford, Bishop of Chester, was a signatory to this. Finally, in 1717, the hospital was built. Boys at the boarding school wore blue uniforms, and learnt the 4 R's, which in those days was pronounced as reading, writing, arithmetic, and religion. A green cap school for day scholars was added in 1790. The boarding school was closed in 1949. Between the Blue Coat Hospital and what was Northgate Jail is Chester's version of the Bridge of Sighs. The Bridge of Sighs is a small bridge built by Joseph Turner in 1793. Prisoners used it for access from the Northgate Jail to the chapel. It became known as the Bridge of Sighs or the Bridge of Death, where the prisoner would receive the last rites and used by those who were condemned to die after the final visit to the chapel. Before we go for a walk on the walls, let's have a look at the Shropshire Union Canal. It's approximately 66 miles long between Ellesmere Port and near Wolverhampton. By the late 18th century, canal building in Britain was at its prime. It was decided that the course of the new cut of the canal would run outside and parallel with the line of the north wall. The navvies, expecting to cut through solid rock, were surprised to encounter the long-forgotten Roman defensive ditch. And it was here that they changed plans, and it is here what we see the cutting today. Chester is a great place for a canal holiday, and you can journey into North Wales and into the Midlands. It is from the Northgate that you can see the bulging Roman wall. The stone the Romans used for the walls came from quarries just outside the Northgate by the Delamere car park and by Edgar's Field on the other side of the river. We will now walk on the walls by the Northgate towards the Eastgate. In the late 1880s, there was much reconstruction work done on the north wall, and in its reconstruction, over 150 tombstones were found, 35 of which we can see in the Grosvenor Museum. These were Roman tombstones that we feel were used in the wall reconstruction between 300 to 400 AD. This was a time of uncertainty in Roman England, and perhaps the use of Roman pagan tombstones by Christian Roman citizens might be seen as a good way of recycling. Let me give you some facts on the walls. The width of the pathway was between 5 foot and 6 foot. The architects who constructed the wall said that there should be 2 men thick walking unopposed. In Roman times, there would have been 34 to 36 towers around the town, approximately 60 meters apart. These towers were to be placed within bow shot of each other. The first tower that we come to is the King Charles Tower, Grade 1, and it used to be called the Phoenix Tower, and before that the Newton Tower because it looked over the parish of Newtown. Towers in Roman times were constructed to be round to deflect missiles and the force of battering rams. In Smith's map of 1585 to 8, we can see at least 5 towers between Northgate and the Eastgate. It was here on the 24th of September 1645 that Charles I watched his army being driven back from Rowton Moor. For safety reasons, Charles left the Phoenix Tower and went to the Cathedral Tower, where he was shot at. It missed, but his aide standing beside him was killed. The Phoenix Tower was so called because there is a phoenix carving on the front of the tower. This is the emblem of the painters, glazers, embroiderers, and stationery company. The carving of it, we believe, was by a Randall Home, but there is some discrepancy of which Randall Home because there were 4 of them between 1570 and 1707. All the Randall Homes were herald painters and genealogists, and all 4 painted memorial boards. Randall Holmes III was an ealdorman, and King Charles II granted him a sinecure of second sewer of the chamber, which basically means extraordinary food taster for the king. As we leave the Phoenix Tower, to our right-hand side is the Deanery Field. The banks inside the walls are remains of the 1st century Roman turf walls. The Deanery Field would have been occupied by Roman barracks, later by gardens, cultivated fields and cattle grazing. To our right is the Bell Tower. The Cathedral Central Tower had structural problems, and so they rehoused the ancient bells in a bell tower built in 1975 by George Pace for the dean of the cathedral. It was the first freestanding bell tower built in Europe since the Middle Ages. It contains 13 bells, some dating from the 17th century, but some people nickname it as the Chester space rocket. We come to the Kellyards Gate. In 1275, Edward I granted the monks of St. Werburgh's Abbey permission to have a postern gate in the city walls so that they are able to reach their Kellyard. A Kellyard was a vegetable garden, but there were conditions: that it was locked at curfew, and according to tradition the curfew bell is rung at 8:45, and the verger closes the gate at 9 o'clock. And this is where we come to the Eastgate. The Eastgate was the main entrance to the Roman fort of Diva Victrix, Diva meaning divine, and although the 2nd Legion established the fort, they were replaced by the famous 20th Legion of Valeria Victrix. The original gate was made of timber, and in the 2nd century was replaced by stone. In medieval times it was very similar to that of the King's Gate at Carnarvon. The gate was replaced in Georgian times as a 3-arch gate. In 1899 a clock was added to the top of the gateway to celebrate the 1897 Diamond Jubilee of Queen Victoria. Some say it's the most photographic clock in the UK after Big Ben. The design is by Douglas and Minshall, both local architects. The framework was by James Swindle. The inscription panels represent the emblems of Scotland, England, Wales and Ireland, and were made by the famous Colebrookdale Iron Company. The clock was made by Joyce of Whitchurch. Thank you for listening to John's Tours, and I hope you've enjoyed this walk. And if you'd like to see other tours, please visit my website at John's Tours.